Welcome everyone to the show Brain Health Unchaining Your Pain. I am really, really excited to have the phenomenal P Granger here on the show. Now, Eric was introduced to me through Aimmee Kodachian, who is a great friend of mine, and just her story is phenomenal. So Eric, just firstly, welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be part of this.
So for those that don't know Eric, he's got an amazing accomplishment since he switched his career. So at the age of 62, Eric decided to change careers and pursue his lifelong dream of telling stories through original songs, stage productions, TV and motion picture scripts. In the past 7 years, Eric's won 2 Best Lyrics Awards in Nashville, written, produced and directed a full-length stage musical, and won 18 screenplay and 40 screenplay finalist awards. His passion is touching people through his work. Wow, Eric, that's an amazing accomplishment in that short time period, really.
Thank you.
So I'm really excited to explore that transition. But before we start in your journey and your storytelling, which I'm really excited about, but for you, this show is all about brain health and unchaining our pain.
Yeah.
What does optimal brain health mean for you personally?
Optimal brain power. I think to me, it just means keeping a clear, open mind. I think one of the traps people, I'll say of my age, is we pigeonhole ourselves into this little box and don't want to look outside of it. We get too comfortable, and we're afraid of discomfort, I think. And so I've always been the opposite. If it's uncomfortable, I go attack it instead of hide from it.
Do you know, I think that's really important, because we can get really comfortable, can't we, when we get to a certain point in life?
Right.
It doesn't matter when that reaches, that we get comfortable with the status quo, and we don't seek to really keep growing and developing ourselves. And from a brain health perspective, is we can always grow our brain irrespective of what age we're at, and develop and reach new heights and accomplish new things. And we often, based on potentially our societal expectations or our societal norms, we think that we're kind of stuck, and we don't give ourselves that permission often to take on new challenges and to really grow.
And it's actually incredibly healthy to challenge yourself and learn new things and keep your brain challenged. I think it's incredibly healthy for you.
Absolutely. And it's one of the risk factors, actually, in terms of cognitive decline, is retirement and aging. Exactly. And the most important thing in that, at any age, is to learn new things, to learn something new every day, and to stretch ourselves cognitively, as well as physically.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, go learn a new language or
Yeah. Right? So you really did that, didn't you? you really. I'm really excited to explore before you made that transition to who you are now. Could you just tell us a little bit about your journey? Obviously, you were working.
Well, I've always been the storyteller in the family, at family gatherings or Thanksgiving or things like that. I seem to be the one all the kids would gravitate to and just listen to some of the silly things I've done in my life and telling stories that way. And as I got to, we'll say, the age of 60, before, I haven't been in the event business. I have a small production company up here in Lake Placid, New York, but part of that business is to carry heavy equipment and speakers and sound systems and lighting and those sorts of things, because I'm a very small company. So I'm not just an instructor. I was the doer also many times. So as you get older, one of the things is you're more prone to hurting yourself or stressing your body and things like that. And I started thinking, I don't want to do this when I'm 70 years old. I don't want to be physically killing myself when I'm 70. And so I really sat down and was thinking about it seriously. What is it? What are my best traits? What are my best talents? My best talents. And so as an event producer, I would direct shows and sometimes write the script for shows. And I kind of put that together with I like to tell stories and do things like that. And I've always played the guitar a little bit and wrote a few songs for myself, that sort of thing. And so I decided, what my best talent actually is telling stories, whether it's through a song or sitting by the campfire kind of thing. That's really my best talent and where I get my most joy personally. Yeah. So I said, I'm going to see what it takes to be and I'm a movie buff, so I love movies. And so I said, I think I should aim it in that direction. Oh, I've always had this idea. Wouldn't that be a great movie? Wouldn't that be a great movie kind of thing? So I threw myself into that world. I traveled to New York City and took some classes on screenwriting from some of the best instructors there are. It's a 3-day seminar thing, nothing heavy. And then I started writing right away, and I thought I was the I thought I was the bee's knees, right there. But it's a long, arduous journey writing. Yeah. It's a private journey, which I didn't realize how much so, but it puts you one-on-one with your own mind a lot. And I came to like that, the piece and the challenge at the same time of that. And so I started writing screenplays, and now that it's written, now what? Okay, big deal. So the only way I knew of at that time was to enter some competitions, writing competitions, and let the world judge me. And that's a tough decision, to let other people judge your work. But I knew I had to do that, and I knew that was the path I needed to take. So I did. I started entering different screenplay competitions all around the world, to be honest with you, just to see what kind of feedback I would get from doing that. And I was pleasantly surprised that people like what I was doing. And and so I kept on writing and kept on entering, kept on writing, kept on entering. Oh, there's another idea. And I would work on that and then send it around. And I got recognition for my work, and that was a tremendous reward in itself.
What was the first story you decided to write down on paper? What was the first one then?
Oh wow! The first one I wrote was called Green Flash. And I kind of combined. I've always been kind of a MacGyver kind of person that if something goes wrong, I'll figure out a way to make it work, whether not on an explosive manner. But so I decided to take that with another strange passion that I have. Is there's a phenomenon called a green flash that happens at absolute sunrise or absolute sunset. It has to do with the diffraction of the light, and as the sun is setting, it will emit a green flash in the last millisecond before it disappears. Wow. So I said, wow, what if I tried to put that into a story about a guy, and probably was very much written, they say, write what you know. So I wrote, the first one was, this real clever guy and that sort of thing. And I wrapped it up in a story about him trying to capture a green flash on his camera. And that was the first story that I wrote.
And you got 2 awards, 2 film festival awards.
I did. Right? Yeah, it's kind of fun to say, wow, people like that. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And and how did your stories? Did you I noticed you've done some very different screenplays and very different stories, and often, you know, our connection with Aimmee is obviously hers is one of great courage and great strength.
Yeah,
Aimmee Kodachian on her journey out of the shadows of darkness. Really,
right.
What is it that inspires you to write those really difficult journeys?
I had when I met Aimmee at a it was at a film festival out in, I think, Beverly Hills, where I met her. I didn't know her before that, or I didn't know her book before that. And I had just finished a screenplay, which was so different for me because it was about human trafficking. And, and I had just tackled a difficult story, I'll put it that way, which is challenging to me to write a story like that versus one of my comedies or just action adventure kind of things that I do. And I met Aimmee, and what do you do? That kind of thing. And she told me she wrote a book and about her life. And I said, and she gave me the elevator pitch to it, that it's about her struggles and the war and things like that. And I said, I'd be interested in reading that. And she said, you would? And I think she sent her husband out to the car right away and brought back, and they put a book in my hands, and I said, I'll give it a look. And so as I was flying home back to the East Coast from the West there, I started reading the book and found that I couldn't put it down.
I had the same.
And then I got home and life took over and I put the book on my desk and I left it there for a while. And then I started thinking about it. And I said, I think I'm going to read it again, but more intently, more calmly, and so I could just really go over it. So I read the whole book a second time, which I never do. And then I was like, wow, this would make an incredible film. So I said, I need, and then I realized I had never gotten Aimmee's card. We never exchanged business cards. And I said, I don't know how to get a hold of this woman. So through Google and finding her, and I finally got a hold of her at her TV website that she has, and wrote her a note and just said, hi, Aimmee, do you remember me, Eric? You know, that sort of thing. And I said, I'd love to talk to you about your book.
Yeah.
And so finally we reconnected, and it was a couple months probably have passed by that we reconnected. And then we probably had half a dozen conversations over the next 2 weeks between the two of us. And so we kind of struck a deal, and I started writing it. I had to read it a third time to really dig into it and to start my research from reading it. And so I learned a lot about Aimmee and a lot about the Beirut Wars and things like that.
Yeah.
And then, as you know, she has re-released her book.
Yeah.
And she, in her re-release, she covered more in depth of the struggles that she really went through.
Yeah.
Which threw me into a whole different frame of mind. And so I had to actually start from scratch and rewrite. I was probably 3/4 of the way through the screenplay as is. And then with this new information, it changed the thrust of the story quite a bit. And so
she added in the abuse piece, didn't she?
Exactly. She went into
as a child.
Yes, and she went through quite a bit of abuse, as you know, having read the story. And to me, it was very pertinent, very important to make that part of what I was doing. And so I went back to page 1 and started working on it again. And I think it makes a more powerful. It was already a powerful story, and I think. The two amazing pieces that I got out of this was the perseverance that she had, and the forgiveness that, and how,
absolutely,
and how does one do that? So I think that's why I got involved with Aimmee on her story.
And I think what's so beautiful about her journey, and in terms of suffering sexual abuse from her brother,
yes,
is that it's nice that she talks about it, because so many people don't talk about it, and quite often what we hear in the news is it's strangers who commit that abuse, whereas actually an awful lot of that goes on within the family unit, and
friends and family, or acquaintances,
and not talked about. It's a huge taboo topic, isn't it? And I think it's important that we empower people to know that you can get through it, you can get help, you can get support, and you can get healing from those experiences.
And she was raised in a culture where, my goodness, you don't talk about anything.
No,
any kind of issues like that. You just because unfortunately, being a woman in that culture, the burden would fall back on her.
Yeah. And she would be the person that's seen it almost of shame.
Yeah, exactly.
Associated with it, which is a terrible position to be in as a young child. You're the one that isn't, you're the victim, but actually you're seen as the perpetrator.
Exactly.
By bringing discredit to the family, even though the perpetrator is within the family, is not you.
Yeah.
So it's an incredibly powerful story. And what for you has been the hardest aspect of writing the stories? What was the hardest one to write in terms of all of the screenplays?
Of all of them? I actually, to be honest with you, it's probably Aimee's. And it's for a couple of reasons. One is it's not purely my imagination going crazy, which most of my screenplays are that. And no, they are, because my mind goes everywhere. And
it's great.
And when you write dialogue, which is probably the hardest part of any story, is when I would write from invented characters, you write from that individual character's point of view to write their dialogue in conversation. And so for Aimee's story, in the novel, most of the story takes place in her mind. She's just saying in her mind how she feels and how she's put up with this stuff. But to present that on a screen, you have to put that into dialogue. Without sounding trite or, oh, I've had a bad day to yourself, because people don't do that. So the biggest challenge was, how do I get the point across without sounding like trivial, and make it emotionally connecting to people at the same time there. And that's why I think it was the biggest challenge of it. And to write from Aimee's point of view, what would Aimmee say at that time as the 13-year-old? So, and luckily she's given me complete literary license to do that. And so it's, but it's challenging. I'm not a 13-year-old Lebanese oppressed young lady, and to write in that person, write dialogue, and plus the response dialogue in the conversation. I think that's the most challenging.
How are you able to get into that mindset of people that doesn't present you personally? How do you manage to do that as a writer?
It is difficult. Maybe I've been a stage actor for many years, just on a community level, community theater level, and had a few acting classes, but not much. But one thing I always had was that ability to become that character on stage, and that character on stage I know is not Eric, but I was able to become that character on stage which is really transformational. It's pretty amazing when you make that leap in front of an audience. So I think that has helped me to when I'm writing, especially someone like Aimmee, to put myself into that character, which is really kind of crazy when you're having a conversation, especially if it's 3 or 4 people in a group conversation. I have to speak in each voice, but speak differently. I have to speak from their background and where they're coming from and their mindset for each voice. And I think the very little bit of training I have had has helped me do that. That's
wow.
Yeah.
And do you find, because obviously it's incredibly mentally challenging and exciting to do that, because you're having to play out stories in your mind that you've never experienced, but you're ultimately reliving them from multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
Have you ever found it challenging for you personally to get back into the present? Because I know we talk a lot about this from actors' perspectives, don't we? But maybe not so much from screenwriters' perspective, where the actor takes on the character because they're so engrossed in the character.
I think the difference is
affects them.
Yeah, I think the difference is in some. I wrote a comedy that's in production now out in LA, and I was 9 different characters.
Wow.
And at the same time, and when you're writing, and so it's I think that's part of your mental flexibility that I've always had, but it can be exhausting.
Yeah.
To get back into it, but I've also found that it also makes you want to get back into the story. I don't know if that's and which character do I relate with the most, and so it's very I don't even know how to say it, but it's actually invigorating. It's as a mental exercise. And I do have to pull myself away at times and give myself a few minutes to get back into the real world. Oh shoot, it's instead of running down the hallway with a knife in my hand, I got to stop and take out the garbage. So it's a big switch in the brain there.
No, I'm fascinated about this because also when we create stories in our mind, our memories are stories that we've decided to store. Some memories we choose to keep, and some memories we not relevant to us, so we don't. But the more powerful the emotional attachment is, the more whether it's a negative or a positive attachment, it is kind of irrelevant. If it's a powerful emotional tug, we'll choose to keep those memories. So do you find that as you're doing the screenwriting and all the imagination that you have to conjure up in your mind, that you end up storing very powerful experiences that actually don't exist in reality, and that ultimately plays out on your mind? Do you find that happens?
I keep some of them, but I'm going to be honest with you. The majority of them, no. I don't know how I put up that little.
You put a little, a little guard up.
Because I mean, ultimately, they're stories, obviously. But I think the one with Aimmee is a little more personal. Because I know her so well now. And so part of my brain says, oh wow, she actually went through this. This is true stuff. And so I think some of those incidences stay with me a little bit more than others. It's really fascinating because once you contacted me, I started thinking about a lot of, in anticipation of your questions, I started thinking about, well, how does the brain work in all this? And it's quite fascinating that I think when I'm reading Aimmee's book to do the writing, I think a lot of those little mirror neurons kick in. And so what I've learned is it's kind of like yawning. If I would make a big yawn and someone else, other people start yawning.
The same. It's a great thing to do on the train or a bus.
Exactly. And so, and so when I'm learning the emotion that she's going through, my mirror neurons kick in and I start feeling the same emotions, for that. So I think it helps with the writing. And I think it's also more difficult to separate after I've done a writing session. I think it's more difficult to separate those because her memories become my memories in a sense. I certainly don't feel the deep part that she does, but that's a pretty interesting phenomenon that takes place.
That's really powerful, actually. And one of the people that are typically really empathic take on other people's emotions as if they're their own, and they don't have that barrier. They don't have that barrier between themselves and other people. And so they end up getting completely overwhelmed with the emotions that others portray. And ultimately the emotional tank gets full very quickly, and they can't cope, or they get overwhelmed with the emotional charge that they possess. And what's really important, especially if, like yourself, is you're absorbing the emotional content of what you're reading or what you're writing, is that you have that opportunity to discharge, like a capacitor, to discharge the emotion, so you can refill your tank up again with whatever you want to fill it up with.
Isn't it strange that the writing, they say writing is cathartic for people who have gone through these kinds of things, and it's cathartic for me, and I haven't even been through them. It's pretty wild how that works.
And isn't that just an amazing example of the importance of writing to help you manage your emotions, because it acts as a discharge to your mind. Is literally you getting it out of your mind and onto paper is that discharging process. And there are other techniques.
Almost every psychologist I know would suggest writing a journal if you're going, and so in a sense, I'm writing in someone else's journal.
Amazing. What's been the most cathartic, talking about that emotional, journey that we go on, and stories are all really about emotions, and what's been the most cathartic screenplay that or show that you've been a part of?
Oh my, most cathartic. Maybe it's my comedy that I mean, there's nothing more fun than making people laugh to me, and see that reaction from people. And so to get great response from my comedy, and I've got a couple of them out there now, but to get a great response from those.
Give some examples of the comedies you've written, so people can look them up.
Of the actual screenplay? I wrote one called Where There's a Will, and it's about and it's about a estranged family getting together for the reading of their father's will. So it's brothers and sisters. They just haven't been close for the last 10, 20 years, and they all thrown back in a room to get the reading of the will. And so, but again, it's a comedy. And so they find out there's a couple of brothers and sisters they didn't even know about.
Which happens in real life. I had a friend at university who found out he had brothers and sisters he wasn't aware of when his father passed away.
But the comedy, the part of this is that I guess in the story, their mother passed away some 20 years ago, but the father had a few adventures in life after that. And he's the father who passed is a multimillionaire. So there's a little going to be some fighting over the money, that kind of stuff. And he made his money inventing board games back in the day, from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. He invented all these board games and made a big fortune. So the gist of the story is he's making all the siblings compete in board games.
I think that's brilliant.
for a week in his mansion on his estate there. But they play one game a day for 7 days. And the more you play, the more you win. At the end, so they have to stay in order to get the money. And so it forces them to rebuild their relationships, is what it does. And it's a white family and a affluent family, and the two estranged siblings. One is a little Asian girl, and the other is this African boy who they didn't. So all of a sudden they have siblings that don't look like them, don't feel like them. And it's that whole relationship of the week of them all working together and fighting together and things like that, and to stay together for the week. And that's what the comedy is about.
That is hilarious. And I know that you've written another screenplay which is located in Lake Placid.
Yes,
which is a beautiful place. I remember, one of my biggest adventures is when I was just finishing my PhD was to go into the Adirondacks and stay at the Adirondack Lodge, which is
you've been there
from where you were. So when I was doing the research on you, I thought, oh my goodness, I've just had a flash. My old journey just came
wonderful.
back to me.
Excellent.
Of my adventure. So what inspired you to write that story?
Well, that's an interesting story because it's a romance story and adventure. But I wanted to write a love triangle scenario that no one has ever written. And so what the angle is, a young lady, she falls in love with two young men at the same time. But anytime that's ever been done in the past, maybe she's betrothed to one guy, but he's not such a good character, and the other guy's the handsome young savior kind of person. But my thought was, what if both of the guys were good guys? What if both of them are nice? What if both of them are kind and gentle? But she just happens to fall in love with both of them at the same time. So I wanted to write that story because I don't think I've never seen it before.
Yeah, because you always have a good cop and a bad cop kind of scenario, don't you?
Exactly. And you got to have a bad cop in there. So it's the best man of the groom to be. He's kind of the bad cop in the story. But I put it in 1905, back 100 plus years ago. Because it's when some of the affluent peoples first started coming to Lake Placid to enjoy the great outdoors, but they're city people. So we have conflict between the city people and the mountain people. We have conflicts that they came there to get married because the boy, the groom, always went there as a young man. He always went to the Adirondacks with his father and befriended a local guy who's a guide. And they kind of grew up together. So it's the young guy that lives in the Adirondacks who the girl falls in love with so now we have two best friends, and the fiance is in love with both of them at the same time.
Wow!
So I think that's a triangle I've never seen written, and I wanted to. And then we throw it in the Adirondack Mountains, and you got fishing involved, and you got climbing hills and stuff like that as part of it. So I wanted to write that story because I've never seen it before.
Yeah, great. And do you know what I love about your career transition? I know you're still doing what you used to do before to a certain degree, is that the sky's the limit, the only limitation is your imagination.
Yeah, exactly. I've written some pretty crazy. I was in Sacramento at a film festival, and there was and I went to that one because during one of the seminars was a screenwriting professor from UCLA. He's taught screenwriting all these years, and I went more to hear his seminar and listen to what he had to say. And one of the things he said, I asked him a question, and I said, what's the one thing that you don't talk about that a screenwriter can do to make himself better? And he just said, always challenge yourself. Always challenge yourself. Don't get comfortable with what you're doing. And boy, that just hit home for me. It's like, always challenge myself, always challenge myself. So on this flight home, coming back to the East, I said, how could I challenge myself? And then I came up with an idea. What if the protagonist in the story was an inanimate object? How challenging would that be? You know, how challenging would that be to do that? And I said, I'm going to do this. And I started writing on the plane. I started going crazy writing. I wrote a short screenplay, and the character, the main character, is a throw pillow. Yeah. So I wrote this screenplay about this throw pillow, and it's like, wow, that's kind of crazy, but I'm going to submit that. I submitted it to without a second rewrite, without editing myself or anything. I entered Cannes. I said, if I'm going to test myself, you're
going to go there.
Yeah.
The biggest film festival globally.
Yeah. And it won 3rd place out of 2,000 screenplays.
Wow.
3rd. And it's one I wrote in literally a day and a half. But I challenged
no constraints, though. You know, your vision was challenge.
Exactly. And I challenged myself, and it evidently worked. So
wow, that's amazing. What's going to be your next, big challenge for you? Where are you going to push into, your growth zone? Because obviously our comfort zone gets bigger and bigger as
it does
as we grow. So we have to keep pushing that envelope, don't we? We need to keep pushing the growth curve.
I've got 3 or 4 ideas after I finish Aimmee's project, and one is a historical one, and I think that might be quite a challenge to me to do a historical piece. And it's a really strange story that happened in the U.S. In the 1860s, and it's never heard of and never talked about. It was a group of Irishmen in the United States decided to attack Canada.
Okay.
And I did research on that, and I thought it was going to be a comedy. I thought it was going to be like, but it's an amazing story.
Wow.
That they were trying to just free Ireland from the grips of Great Britain at that time. It was just after the famine, and they thought if they could capture Canada, they would negotiate and say, "You free Ireland, we'll give you your Canada back." And this underground army was formed. It was right after the American Civil War, and this underground army, they had a Congress. Inside the United States, secretly, they had Congress, they had congressmen and everything, and they would have these secret missions all over Northeast United States. They would raise money for an army and all this kind of, and it's all just hiding right under the surface.
All under the radar, yeah.
Yeah, at the time of Reconstruction after the Civil War, and they attacked Canada 4 times.
Wow.
And they were turned back, and that's an interesting story that I think I'd like to work on, but I've never done a historical piece. So.
And what do you enjoy the most? Because you've got such a breadth of experience on all of the different types of ways in which we can tell a story through visual representation. What do you enjoy the most? Is it plays? Is it movies? Is it TV shows?
With a play, you get instant gratification.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my story about the Adirondacks was done as a musical, and I wrote all the songs for it. I did all the music in the book and the lyrics, and I did the whole thing on that one. And you get, again, it's instant gratification. A live standing ovation is just it's ego building. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's nothing better than standing up on stage and hearing people applaud your accomplishments.
Yeah, and we sold out the second week of the run. We sold out every night.
Wow.
And so that is a tremendous feeling to be there, and as you're receiving that. because I had to step in several times and play some of the actors, play the characters that was not intentioned.
Yeah.
But I would have to, because of whatever reason, I have to run up on stage and all of a sudden be that character in my show. So I played a couple of different characters in that show, but that accolade is just, it's hard to imagine it. And opening night for a musical that you have written is just terrifying. It's just,
I imagine.
Yeah, it's. I remember telling somebody, I feel like I'm having a baby or something. You know, because I literally worked on it for 9 months, and
yeah,
and I produced and directed it, and so it's just it's hard work, but God, it's just rewarding.
Yeah. How do you cope with the, those emotions, because they must be incredibly intense, all that build up with the 9 months, and then it goes into production, and obviously the production, you'll get feedback, and then eventually you get to the first night.
It's I've always been pretty good about controlling my emotions. I never get upset. I never get mad at people. I don't yell at people. It's not me. I just don't do that. And I kind of take the approach. I think you can do better. Why don't you try this? Instead of what the hell are you doing? You're supposed to be.
Yeah.
It doesn't get you anywhere. I don't get upset in life. I don't get upset at people. I just I don't let that penetrate me, I guess.
I think that's a really great piece of advice, because a lot of people, they're in I'll just use an analogy of a boat on a water of emotions.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that create the waves. They're bouncing in the boat.
Yeah, yeah.
And they create the waves of emotions that other people have to then deal with.
Exactly.
Because the waves go out and hit the other boats, and some people have got little tiny boats and they can't deal with them, and other people have got huge big tankers and they're all ready, and it doesn't make any difference. But the fact that you're not the one creating the waves, you're just steadying the ship.
In the long run, you just hurt yourself by doing it.
Yeah.
You really do. You just so.
And you fall overboard often.
Yeah.
Because the emotional waves, you're bouncing up and down in your boat. You eventually,
that's right.
You eventually fall out.
Right,
but you can swim.
But you need those people. To right the boat. You need them. Yeah. Why make it worse?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really important. And what's your next big goal, or your big vision for the future? What is it you want to achieve? Because we can all set ourselves, expiration dates, if you will.
Sure.
But you've chosen not to do that.
No, I don't think about it. No. I just don't think about it. I guess I'm too ignorant to recognize my own age and my own aging. I just don't deal with this because I don't accept it. I just don't accept it.
So I mean, we know people. The founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken. He became a millionaire at, I think it was 67 or 69.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping anybody from being.
But that was his passion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and this is my passion: telling stories, and it didn't help. The COVID has not helped my cause at all. Yeah. Because things in Hollywood and LA just went dead for a year and a half at least. And they're just barely climbing out of it now.
Yeah.
But I mean, the goal is to see your name on the big screen someday, that kind of thing. Or it's phenomenal to win accolades.
Yeah.
And the first time I walked the red carpet and received an award was just mind blowing. That here's this old guy up in the mountains of Lake Placid, just wheeling and dealing in Hollywood all of a sudden, and it's kind of mind blowing.
And what do you think? I know you just mentioned COVID. And I think this is a really important point, because the film industry has really been put on hold, but the film industry is really good at lifting people out of holes, giving people that alternative perspective of life.
Yeah.
Helping people understand that there is opportunity for hope and healing, and obviously for humor as well. You know, the entertainment industry is about entertaining people.
Yes.
What do you think the industry needs to do or could do to really help people out of the darkness that they're in, you know, as a whole nation, and really around the world? How do you think the industry could really help people with this transition into that new state that we want to move into?
Well, unfortunately, there are very few venues for feel-good movies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are some, and there's some great ones out there, but those are indie films. These are independent filmmakers.
Yeah.
The industry wants to make the blockbusters that make, you know, go into syndication or will go around the world and make money for them in Bangladesh, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so the established industry is not focused on feel-good movies.
Okay.
But there's some great indies, independent filmmakers who they still want to tell stories, like Aimmee's story, like things like that, like the human trafficking story. And even it has a good, you know, a feel-good element to it, by overcoming. And so I wish the big industry people would feel more inclined to do some feel-good movies. You know.
And I think that's really important now, because people need to feel good and better. And that, you know, it's very easy to get sucked into the negative social media aspect.
It really is. It really is. And there are some, like Hallmark always has feel-good movies, and industry comedies seem to go to the feel-good movies. You know, even though it might be a little bizarre or something, there's still a more moralistic ending to it, or family reuniting, or the love couple gets back together, that kind of thing. So there are a lot out there, but they're mostly out of the independent film industry.
And I noticed most of your films you've made more towards an adult audience. Is there a challenge in the future to write something for the younger audience, children or young children, as a challenge to yourself?
I think you just threw down the gauntlet there. So
did I?
I think so. I did write a small children's book recently that's being put into. We're trying to find an illustrator and things like that. But that's just a book thing. I've never thought about it too much, even though most of my family feels I'm childlike. I should probably.
Well, because when we started this conversation, you're telling the fact that all the children used to magnetize towards you with the stories that you tell. So I feel like there's some untapped potential in there that is waiting to be released.
That's a good. It's a good observation.
And, you know, with all of your experience on, you know, your mindset, your massive imagination that you have, and the importance of creating stories that make people feel good, I think children really need, you know, given the situation that they've been through, that they're kind of like the forgotten generation in the COVID crisis. There's so much focus on how adults are suffering, and the, you know, the older generation are struggling because of just the pure fact of more susceptible.
Sure.
But there's a forgotten generation that are not being supported, not being talked about. Those stories aren't being told.
Wow.
And they need those feel good stories to know that, you know, there is a light at the end of the tunnel for them too.
That's no, you're absolutely right. So I guess I'll have to start putting a few great brain cells in that direction.
And are you willing to share your the story that you've written, a children's story?
Oh, yeah, sure. It's I think it's called if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you like to be? And then the next page would be, if you were a bird, what kind of bird would you like to be? And then it goes through a peacock or a robin or this kind of thing, and or one that eats worms all day long, and it rhymes.
Yeah.
And then so each page is, if you were a flower, or if you were a bug, or if you were a farm animal, or so each page is like, what one would you like to be? That kind of thing.
Oh, that sounds wonderful, because I know like the rhyming books. So Julia Donaldson, for me over here, my daughter Lily is two and a half. It is amazing at it really catches children's imagination when you can write rhyming stories.
Exactly.
Because it's easy for them to remember, and easy for them to easy for the adult to read as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. I know my dad wrote his book, Peter Pixie Visits the Rescue Centre, which is his first story. He's written several.
Oh, good.
And he used to read those to us when we were children, and they really captured our imagination. And actually capturing the imagination of kids, we all went off to be pretty creative children in our own right. I think it's really important that when you have such a powerful imagination, that you share it with as many as you can. It's really important. That sounds fantastic. And I'm more than happy to give you a contact for illustrator if you want to.
I'll probably take it. So if you want, because it's just fun. But I grew up in nature. I grew up, my parents always took us for a hike once a week, that kind of thing. So and one of my many past lives I've had here lately is as I was a forest ranger in the States here for about 10 years.
Wow.
And I would take people on hikes and teach them about what each flower is, or edible plants in the woods, and what the birds are, and that sort of thing. So it's kind of an extension of that.
Do you know, you're absolutely singing my music, because I'm a mountain leader through the military, and I find it so important that we educate children about the wonders of nature, and particularly now with the climate struggles that we're experiencing. It's so important that we connect them to their awareness of nature and the importance of looking after it, and getting them away from their screens.
Yes. So that was the inspiration for the book, and that we're working on, and it's and like I said, I rhyme. If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you want to be? And then the next page explains all these kinds of trees. This one gives fruit. This one gives shade. This one makes maple syrup. This one does this. So which one would you want to be? And so each section goes through each category of and describing the different kinds of birds, or the different kind of flowers, or things like that.
Wow. Well, if you need a review, I'm more than happy to get my daughter Lily to review it, because she's an avid reader, and she'll definitely be able to provide you with some great feedback. Even though she's very young. That sounds fantastic.
So a children's movie, I guess I'll start thinking about that.
Well, do you know, I think it's I'd love to chat with you more about this, because I'd love for the stories that my dad's written to be turned into an amazing movie that's magical and creative, and it's all about nature and working in harmony with the animals in the forest, and understanding how all the different types of insects that we have in our forests.
Exactly
how they work together. So I think it's really important we give that magic to children, as well as their imagination that knows no bounds, right? So giving them that little hook to expand their imagination is just...
I agree. Growing up in the Adirondacks and living in the Adirondacks, it always amazed me when the people from the city do come, and the children just have they actually have most of them have a fear of
wow.
of the wild, of the forest, you know, and rather than, I'm just the opposite. I'm afraid of New York City. So
yeah, if my daughter could go camping every day, you know, she would. She has to camp in her bedroom. Every day is a camping day for her, and she's constantly wanting to go out in our camper van, because from a young age we've got her out into the you know, into nature and to experience it. And it's really
well. You'll have to bring her to the Adirondacks.
I definitely will, and we'll go to the Adirondack Lodge, and I'll. No, that would be wonderful. I'd love to go back up there, up in New York State. It was such a beautiful place.
It sure is.
Yeah, so beautiful. So what one piece of advice, you know, this show is all about brain health and unchaining your pain, and I'd like to go back to the beginning of your story and your journey, where you realized, you know, physically you couldn't continue with the struggles that you were experiencing because of your work, of the work that you were doing. So you switched from very much a physical fulfillment to a mental fulfillment in your life, and unchained your pain in that way, and also sort of gave yourself a new career pathway that you didn't have before, at a time where other people may be considering winding down because of physical constraints that they possess.
Sure.
What one piece of advice would you give anybody who's at that stage of their life where their physical mobility is becoming a hindrance, shall we say? What piece of advice would you say to people that are in that situation?
I think the one piece of advice would be to be flexible. I think we started off with that, is don't pigeonhole yourself. Be flexible in the world. Doesn't mean you have to run out and decide to be a computer programmer and learn all about programming, but there's so much out there. Don't be afraid to challenge yourself. Get out there, do something you never thought you would do before, and you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how it can rejuvenate your mind by going outside your box, outside your comfort zone. It's scary. Sure, it's scary. I was scared to death to submit my very first screenplay.
Yeah.
I was, because it's like, oh no, what if they hate me? You know, you go through that. What if I'm no good?
Predicting the worst. That's a little automatic negative thought coming in there.
Oh sure. Yeah. But I didn't let that stop me.
Yeah.
So I said, what? Let's go for it. Let's do it. So
I think that's so important. I have a saying I used to give often give to people is, don't be afraid to fail. Be afraid not to try.
Exactly.
Because you never know what you'll accomplish, but you just have to try.
Yeah. You know the famous line Thomas Edison said about that was, I did not learn to invent the light bulb. I learned 10,000 ways not to invent the light bulb. He failed 10,000 times.
Yeah, and so many people were, you know, very skeptical about what he wanted to accomplish. But goodness me, aren't we thankful that he did fail 10,000 times?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, so that he could get that one win.
And unfortunately, I think the world out there dares you to stay in your lane and just, you know, don't do that. You'll be a failure. You know, so you've got that part. Are you crazy? At your age, what are you doing? You know, that kind of attitude is out there. And luckily, I've never listened to it. I didn't listen to it when I was young. I'm not going to listen to it when I'm old, just because I didn't listen to it when I'm young. So
I think that's brilliant. How can people get hold of you? I know we've got a banner running on the bottom, but how can people get hold of you?
Yeah. Well, my website is ericpgranger.com, and you can contact me through there. There's contact information, or you can get me on Facebook, at Eric Granger. I think it's Eric Granger 50, because there's a bunch of Eric Grangers out there, and like everyone, there's. Yeah, just reach out to me. I enjoy the contacts, and I spend a lot of time answering emails all the time there.
Yeah.
So.
And do make sure you check out Eric's website, because honestly, the accolades that he has, the accomplishments that he's achieved with all of his films and screenplays and so on, it's just really phenomenal. And it's just a really what I think is a real beacon of light for people to know that, you know, you can do something different with your life at any age.
Yeah, sure.
And just go for it.
Yeah. But the big, it's taking that leap. It's you know, have faith in yourself, even if other people don't. You know, if whether it's in the art world. I mean, I know people. Grandma Moses, if you remember, she didn't start painting till she was nearly 70, and people like that just, you know, don't put a negative hat on before you even begin. You know,
yeah.
don't do, I can't do that. Oh, I could never do that. You know, that kind of thing, because it's you can do just about anything if you want to. You can
do anything if you put your mind to it.
Exactly.
I truly believe.
Yeah, and don't be afraid of failure. That's the big thing. Just you know, I certainly got rejection letters, like everybody. Oh, sorry, thank you. You know, you're not good enough. That kind of stuff. I said, okay, fine. You don't think so, but I'll see what the next guy says.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Like Thomas Edison.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. You know, I found many ways not to write a screenplay. So, and
but look what you've accomplished by doing so, you know, by taking that first step and putting pen to paper.
Yeah.
And just get going.
Yeah. So, and don't be afraid to knock on doors. Just don't be afraid of it. Just,
you
know, I lost my modesty a long time ago, so it's a good thing. Just.
Eric, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for your stories, for your insights, for your wisdom, and just showing us the power of imagination.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I really do.
I really hope you enjoyed that conversation. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to like and share this episode and leave a review on my website or on Apple Podcasts. If you're looking for opportunities to optimize your brain health or unchain your pain from a past trauma, make sure you visit my website, www.ruthmaryallen.com, and use the code podcast10 at checkout to get 10% off all programs. And always remember, you are not stuck with the brain you have. You have the power to make it better. You have the power to unchain your pain and optimize your brain power and performance so that you can win back energy and time doing what you love.
Each episode of Brain Health Unchaining Your Pain with Dr. Ruth Allan is for educational and demonstration purposes only. The information shared in each episode should not be interpreted as medical advice. This episode should not be used to self-diagnose or self-treat any health, medical or physical condition. Do not use this episode to avoid going to your healthcare professional or to replace the advice they give you. Consult with a trusted healthcare professional before doing anything contained in this episode. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact www.ruthmaryallen.com/connect.